holey, fuzzy, lumpy. How do I get that smooth finish on my needle felted animals? I'm going to show you my top tips to help you along the way. What is it you're wanting to achieve with the finish of your animal? Maybe you want a short furred animal, like a horse, or maybe it's just some part of the animal, maybe around the nose, that you want to just be really, really smooth and soft. Or maybe it's the style of your sculpture. So for example, with these two foxes, I wanted them to be really short furred. I didn't want them to look necessarily really textured. I wanted to keep it really short so that they can be handled, and it's actually for a class that I'm doing, so I wanted it to be fairly easy, but look smooth. So the first thing I would say about getting that smooth finish is about the entire process. It's not just about putting a load of things together, getting your wool, stabbing it, and then expecting there to be a lovely smooth finish at the end. It is possible, but it could take a lot longer to achieve. So if you start off really well, have really good intention, have a plan, and then hopefully through the process you'll stab, keep it firm, and end up with that lovely smooth finish. It's really important to think about the wool that you'll be using when you create your needle felted animals. So if you're using something like merino wool, this is merino tops here, all of the tops are meaning that all the fibres are going in the same direction, very long fibres, really lovely and soft to touch. So when you actually have your finish, it won't only just look smooth, it'll really feel smooth as well. Now, the only thing about the tops is that if you put it onto your animal and you stab and stab, you may see some holes unless you're going really, really fine with your fine needles. Now, your wool will also come in carded bats or slivers. This is a carded sliver. Now, what you'll notice is that the fibres are really, really short. They're meshed up. They're not in like long strands like with the tops. So it's brilliant for really felting fast and really firm really quickly. You will get more of a rough kind of look though. It may not look as smooth, although I would say if you again really hone down with your fine needle, it will end up looking smooth, just a little bit more of a rougher texture. When it comes to your barbed needles, it's really important to think about using the correct needle for the different stages of the process. So when you first start off with your animal, think about the size of needle being a lot bigger so that it felts a lot faster. These are your lower gauge needles, okay? So you're going to start off with a lower gauge needle, sculpt, get it really firm, and then you'll be going up to your higher gauge needles, your thinner needles, when you want to finish off. After using the 36 for my fox core, I moved on to the 38 gauge triangle, stabbing as evenly as I can, firming up as I go. Sometimes your felt animal may just look like it's too soft and lumpy. That's because you need to keep on stabbing, okay? So if you keep stabbing, if you feel that resistance with the needle that you're on, move up to the next higher gauge needle. When I'm sculpting, I sometimes prefer to have it slightly soft, kind of medium firm, while I'm shaping it into place. Once I've got the shape that I want, then I can go firmer and just keep on stabbing. There's a little dip in here, so I've decided to add a tiny bit more of my core just to layer it over the top and fill it in. Sometimes it is possible to completely smooth over by carrying on stabbing. Sometimes you need to add a little more. Now I'm using the 40 gauge, which is an even higher gauge. There's very little holes that can be seen. I'm using the very tip, not going all the way up to the top of the needle because it's a lot thicker, as you can see. I'm just using the very thin end and shallow felting. I'm also wanting to go at a slight angle, not directly at the 90-degree angle, but just slightly shallower, maybe about 45 degrees at times. You'll see that there's hardly any holes now showing. This here is a spiral needle. When you look close up, you can see the barbs, but you can also see the twisted spiral shape. It's like a mini drill that goes in and out of the wool. It's wonderful to create that smooth finish with very few holes showing afterwards. When layering the colour of wool on top of the core, you have to be really careful about the way that you add it. Remove any little blobs or vegetation matter. Try and make sure that the pieces of the wool are really evenly spread. This is the carded sliver I mentioned earlier. Get nice little wads. You don't want it too thin, you don't want it too thick to show all the blobs. You also want to lay it without folding the edge. You don't want a harsh edge. So just lay it as it is, directly over the fox, like so. You're going to stab it into place with a high gauge needle so there's not too many large holes. Keep going over the surface at an angle, shallow felting as you go. Don't put a harsh edge against the other edge. Very carefully lay it over and blend the two layers side by side, slightly overlapping. I've sped this up so you can see how I achieved it. And here I am later finishing the fox, getting that smooth finish. As I mentioned earlier, merino tops are lovely and soft, but going in the same direction can have its own challenges. You can lay it flat like this, but you're going to have to do lots and lots of stabbing and really get down to the fine needles to give that smoother finish. It does take a lot longer than the carded wools. But if this is all you have in your supplies, then don't worry, just keep going, keep stabbing, and you'll get there in the end. But what I sometimes like to do is to take the tops and actually fluff them in my fingers so that they go in a few different directions, and it just makes it a bit quicker to add. As long as you do it nice and evenly, it makes a great finish once it's all on. You can really blend those edges as well. So you've stabbed all over your animal, you've gone to the finest needle you can, you've shallow felted, you're still seeing some little tiny holes. I mean, people might not notice, but you do. So what do? Try to use your hands or your fingers. Just the warmth of your hands and your fingers can warm up the wool, and you can move the wool around. You can also simply use your needle to brush the fibres over any tiny holes and to make a more smoother surface. Or you might like to take an eyebrow brush or a baby brush or even a toothbrush and use that little bristly side to carefully go over the fibres. You can cover any holes. You can even make it more textured if you wanted to, but still giving that nice, soft kind of look to it. Maybe you've come this far and you're still thinking that your animal just looks too fuzzy. There's stray strands, it just looks really, really messy. Well, that's fine. Sometimes animals need to be fuzzy. You might want that textured look, but if not, don't forget a really good pair of little scissors to go around snipping all of those loose ends will really, really help. You might also like to use a small iron to smooth down any fuzz. Straighteners can also be used for slim pieces. You put the piece between the plates, such as ears. So this is an ear that I'm smoothing. It smooths down that fuzz, makes it super sleek. Look at that, nice and thin and smooth. Or with feathers, doing the same again. You can see that all of the fibres are flattened down. Surely, if I'm making a long-furred animal, it doesn't really matter about the core being firm or really smooth, does it? Well, it's true, you're not really going to see it, so don't worry about going over the top and being perfectly smooth. But if leaving it too soft, then any addition of wool can create indents. You want a nice firm surface even when adding long fur so the core keeps its shape. Get it as smooth as you can so there's no lumpy areas underneath as you add the long fur. And the fur flows nicely over the surface. The same thing applies to reverse felting. You want to keep that wool firm so you don't lose the shape and stability when pulling out the fibres with your reverse needle. You want nice even tufts of wool to become your fluffy fur. You don't want chunks being pulled out. So I hope that really helped you, and let me know in the comments what smooth surface animal you are making.